I don't know if you've ever played League of Legends. Hopefully you haven't. Amazing game, but hope for your sake that you haven't played it much. Um, there's a skin line and like Thematic called True Damage, and it was sort of like urban, like rap and pop sort of sound, and they had like the coolest both VFX and sound effects and even like music for it and everything. So I saw this, and like especially the graffiti and just the colors are the same. I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't actually talked to the VFX artist, but I asked his permission to do this and said yes, so that was cool. But like this graffiti stuff, like that's just so True Damage to me, like, and all the writing and stuff. And I used to be involved with graffiti when I was younger, so I'm like, and I like hip hop, I like trap, I like electronic music and blah blah blah. So it all kind of was really up my alley, and I could hear what I could do sonically with this. But it was definitely a how do I hide this? There we go. It was definitely a really challenging one, because what does that sound like, right? Like, it's not strictly just like magic, but you can't also just like put trap sounds over it. Like, you can't just put like a snare. Like, it's like, how do you kind of transform that into, or like, how do you make a magical ability that also fits with like rap and like graffiti style, So that was my challenge. So first of all, by the way, the video playback might be a little bit bad. I think I have this low resolution one here, but I'm recording 4K in Discord on my underpowered computer. So apologies if there's any like stuttering or whatever. Actually, while I mention that, I'm just going to check this real quick, make sure that I'm recording in 60. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, so that was my challenge. How do you make that sound like that? So first of all, I initially tried to lean really heavily into almost like a Foley type of direction, like really like literally representing that stuff. And a lot of that stuff did make it into the final hit here, into the final stuff. I'm just going to, I don't know. See, I'm new to Reaper, and it's like, why does that get so small when it's in this view? Oh, there we go. I told you, I'm new to Reaper. I use Studio One for actual work. So yeah, a lot of scratches, and I'll go through all the tracks like one by one, because why not? And you'll hear, I was really trying to go with that direction first. So you got stuff like that. You have, not in this one, it was a lot in the, like there's white noise on each hit. That's actually just a spray can. And with this, like you can see there's that many layers just for this little thing. Like it was a lot of things that had to add up into one thing, because if it was too literal, it sounded just like kind of weird. But if it didn't have those layers and like that complexity, I wasn't able to sell the sort of magical trap hip hop thing that I wanted. At first I had started with those kind of Foley sounds, and then especially in the riser here, there's a lot of like record scratching stuff. Like you can really hear it when I isolate it like that, because I have kind of normal blades going over top of everything, which is this. Because you need to kind of ground it in what the ability is, like one of my kind of rules with sound design, or something that I try to adhere to a lot, is that like, I want to be able to know what the attack is when I'm hearing it. Like I don't want to, like, with just that, sorry, I don't actually know how to scroll down my session quickly enough. I should really take some time and learn some proper Reaper stuff, especially before doing these breakdowns. It's a little embarrassing. But anyways, if I just heard this, I don't know what that is, like I don't know what, like that's technically like the sound I wanted to design for this, and like the vibe that I wanted to give to it. But that's basically just providing all of like the kind of like body and like context for it, and then the actual blades are the attack. So, but without that, and with that, the blades and like their energy are going to cover up like all of this detail that you hear here. You could argue and maybe rebalance it if you really wanted to. Like if you were comfortable with like, I'll just kind of do it quickly here, like accentuating that and having the blades sit further back into the mix. See, like you could do something like that and have more of that detail from like the ability and like all the urban graffiti, whatever sounds poke through more. But I didn't care, right? I just wanted it to be like, this is a blade that is graffiti and hip hop and trap. And how am I going to do that? And so it was a lot with the low end, and I still wanted it to be, again, like I was saying, clearly a blade attack when I just hear it. Like I don't want to need the visual. I don't want to need the whatever. And this doesn't give me that, but that does give me the like theme of the attack, you know? So I get both the theme of the attack and the fact that it's a knife thing. And that was important for me. And so specifically, like I can go through each of these. I'm not sure, might ruin the video and more me talking theoretically about this is what people want, but I don't really know how to make these videos. I'm just kind of making it. But so I may as well. Yeah. So altogether, it adds up into this. And then in the mix. And yeah, a lot of stuff and a lot of detail is going to get lost in a mix like this, but I didn't want everything to poke through. You know, I kind of had to craft this like almost like paper mache until it kind of gave me that vibe. I could remove stuff, but like then you're missing some of the body, and especially with that, and then, you know, you're missing, if you miss these, it's like, especially in like the lows and like the mids, which obviously the blades aren't covering that much. It adds so much. Anyways, we'll move on from that, but that's sort of my general approach to this, was like, I want it to sound like the thing that it sounds like, but I also wanted it to sound like the theme. And I felt like I achieved that by doing that in a different frequency range and not necessarily worrying so much about the blades covering up the top and whatnot. And then my methodology is really just like I had some sessions where I made some booster sounds. Some stuff is just manipulated from a library. And then really just trying stuff out, chopping stuff up. It's all on a riser, so, you know, you get your envelope right and everything. And yeah, you got to just try stuff out, you know? I originally wanted and intended for it to be a lot more literally like this, but it sounded weird, you know? That doesn't sound like a blade to me. Anyways, I'm going on like a record, get it? I'm a broken record. Anyways, I'll go back to the original starting before I started ranting. And yeah, we just have blades, which is, I mean, they're just basic blades things. These aren't anything complicated. Just nice, layered, mostly just to get some thickness to it, some girth on those swings. And then, yeah, there is a little bit of scratching on that. But in the first one, similar thing. Oh, while I'm just looking at it, I just have VO for stuff, but it's nothing really, takes a while to kind of get that all feeling right, but it doesn't really, and it adds a lot, but it was kind of just yanked from a library. I didn't like go and record somebody doing it, so not really much of a point in me talking about it much. The two hits here are, I mean, it's the same thing as the final one, just in a lighter degree. And that was like a longer attack, whereas the other one is like a build up to kind of like one attack, even though there are kind of swings in there. So this one, there were some more sounds kind of going on throughout the entirety of it. And then also it goes into the next part, which is like the mid booster sort of section. Can hear some resampling stuff there. I'll talk about it after. But yeah, so there was this period here, like kind of between the last hit and there, which I had to fill with stuff also. So it's like tails from this, and then you're kind of keeping the energy going almost really the whole time. Like it's, again, I don't know if you've ever played League, but I kind of imagine this to be like Riven's Q, where if you spam it, you're kind of doing this whole sort of like, okay, you one attack and then you activate it again, you do another attack, and then it's the whole kind of like 3-hit combo, right? That was kind of how so yeah, you do the 2 hits, and then that's one ability, the charge is going, you do the charge up ability, that's the second one, and then you can do the final hit. So it's like 3 sort of attacks or kind of key moments in this. And yeah, so for the second hit, the first 2 hits, there's more energy happening. The energy hasn't been expended, and it is in a way kind of like preparing for the rest of it. So there's more stuff happening throughout it all. So we'll just go through it layer by layer again, and just keep me from yapping away. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing. That's like all these layers. Again, it's like oftentimes when I'm making something like this and it doesn't exist, like there's no, as far as I know, there's no library that you can go into and pull off like graffiti knife wielding attack. You know, that was partially why I wanted to do this project, because it was hard, you know. And so I think when you're making something like quote unquote from scratch, where I'm combining stuff from my own sound design sessions specifically for this with libraries and everything to try and create something that doesn't exist, sounds are complicated, like in real life, you know, like any sort of sound, you know, you do you drop a computer on the ground, there's all the different parts in there, there's the ground, there's the room, there's everything. Like sounds are very complicated, you know. And of course you could just do like some sort of 808 with the blade and stuff, and it's like, sure, that's cool, but like, does that sound like anything? Is that really that like interesting? Like, this is going in my reel, you know. I wanted this to be I wanted to flex, I wanted to do something. And so I find when I'm making something from scratch like this, I'm layering a lot of things, because that's the way that I hear sound in real life. It is a large collection of small sounds that add up into something, even if they're very small. And even if you go through each layer, like I could probably take out, that's called subtle, you know, I could probably, you can hear it like a little bit when it's around there, but that's about it. But it's all of these things add up into something, or at least I believe all of these things add up into something interesting. So that's like my methodology, where it seems like when I'm going through these that I'm kind of doing a lot, or that I'm maybe doing too much, or there's more layering than you're maybe used to seeing. But that's the way I work if I'm making something that doesn't exist, you know? So anyways, you have these 2 hits, and I wanted them to have like a really round bottom, because that's, you know, like in 808, and especially like in hip hop, like just for context, my actual job as an audio engineer, like I mix mostly like rap, R&B, pop, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And with hip hop kicks in general, they tend to be very like round in the low end, because they come from 808 drum machines historically. which have this nice clean sub to them. So that was something that I wanted to infuse into this and into the hits, and why a lot of my noise and like tonal work in this came from is in the higher registers with like the risers and other things, which are very like hip hop oriented, and why like that is a very round low end, you know. And so that makes up the punch low end. And it's thinking like, how can I make a graffiti hip hop trap urban ability similar to something like you'd see in True Damage? And so you think about the characteristics of those genres, like sonically and the literal audio of them, and you apply that to this. And so it's something like that. It's like, okay, well, I need an impact and I need low end and I need this envelope. Like, okay, well, that's sort of like an 808. It's going to have this like this round low end. And that's sort of like how my brain was conceptualizing, designing this sound. And then as you heard, it's a lot of like small tonal layers adding up to just kind of like an exciting, sort of slightly magical noise. And then you have the spray cans, which actually add a lot, just this one track, because it's just white noise, right? It's like you can't get any higher energy than that. Again, you might not hear it on YouTube as much, especially when I'm going through like the subtleties in some of these layers, but as I repeat myself like a broken record again, it all adds up into something. Excuse me. And then to contrast, I have the thought as I was thinking about the low end of that ability. When you're like spinning a vinyl or whatever, that's what this riser is. Both literally. May as well break this down while I'm talking about it. Like, you hear what I'm saying? Like, this is, I think about the low end, I think about what I need, I think about the envelope and everything, and I'm like, oh, well, that's what a record sounds like when you're speeding it up or slowing it down or whatever. You get a bit more of like the wobbliness in the low end because it's going through the track faster, of like a bass line or usually jazz or something, right? So it's actually quite melodic, which is what ended up happening. So I'll just go through the rest of these quickly. And so some of these tracks like this thing, that's just, it's like a riser, urban trap, blah, 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 as I've been through. Sometimes when I'm designing a sound, I'm adding stuff in because it's like, oh, that's just, like, I need that almost by default, right? Like if I'm making a blade ability, I need knives, right? Like I need the whooshes, and if they're a bit closer up and there wasn't as much going on, I would need like cloth Foley, and maybe if they had leather gloves, like the sound of that, and if their boots are on the ground like that. Like there's some things that are like, okay, that's going in no matter what. And for me, that's a lot of, like if you have a riser to an impact or you have an impact, there's like certain, like I need some sort of noise at the hit, whether it is noise or whether it's something noisy enough, or I need rising in volume, I need rising in pitch, I need whatever. So that's what some of these tracks are. So there's not really like, sure, it's design, but it's almost more of like, just because this is technically, I did this more as a linear piece, obviously, than I did as just an ability. But yeah, so some of the tracks are, again, just kind of boring, I guess. But I tried to, like in this one, like with the spray cans and stuff, try to keep it in theme if you can. But some stuff is just kind of boring, or like the VO, maybe I could have done some cool, echoplex, like you're an MC and you get the cool echo and the whatever as if you're like rapping on stage. Like maybe you could have done that, but I didn't really care about it. I liked the way this sounded, and I wanted this in the background because there was already a bunch of other stuff up front. And as I was talking about before, kind of like the fighting between the top end of the blade, sounds, which were very important to have, and then just kind of you have to make some sort of sacrifice between that and the detail in all of this, which, you know, you could make the decision to lean the other way, as I already discussed, so I won't go into that. But anyways, really the last thing is just, okay, well, we have the final hit, although it's mostly just a harder variation of the 2 hits here, but this mid-tonal booster thing, back and forth with myself about this because it's a bit dissonant, but it's because a lot of things are rising in pitch at the same time. And the dissonance is kind of like creating a like tension that needs to be resolved. And I think one way that I could have elevated this entire project would be to have started out with a lot more clear of a like musical like cadence or like motif or something. Like they did that a lot in Project, and I think that was like after I finished this, I was thinking about it and critiquing it, and as I do now too. And yeah, that would be my one major critique, is like if this was going in a game, just assuming like just kind of pretending I was making this for Riot and Project, like you would want this to hit the notes and hit the motif and musical stuff, because like right now it's you have like it's going in the right way, but it's kind of like undefined musically, right? And like the actual like the notes of it, you know, and then that's for not necessarily a problem, but further accentuated that what I'm critiquing by this tonal part in the middle, which is not all in key with itself. And I kind of obsessed over it a little bit, trying to, you know, get it in key. And I did a little bit of stretching and stuff to make sure that it wasn't sounding like super dissonant, but it is. And it ended up working because, like I said, it kind of does create that dissonance that needs to be resolved or at least ended in some way. And it just creates that little bit of energy that like a kind of a charge, you know, and then you get the release in the next part of the final winding and the final hit. But yeah, that was sort of my conundrum with this, but I like the way it turned out. And so the way I did it was mostly just a couple of risers. Like the risers are going up in pitch and energy, and then they're being faded out. So you think about like anytime I'm doing sound design and everything, and you know, I'm thinking about like pitch and I'm thinking about like volume and everything, like and almost as like literal like data. And I'm like, okay, well, I know when I'm designing this sound, like I want at least the pitch to be going up and the volume to be going like this, or vice versa in different situations. So for this, pitch rising, volume going like this, because the ability you charge up, it sort of fades out and then the next stuff happens. So we'll go through it layer by layer, or I'll just show you. You know, like all the energy in the VFX here, I'm gonna make this bigger. All the energy in the VFX here completely dissipates before the rest of the hits start. That's why I was talking about the energy needs to go back down, but the pitch needs to rise, because that's like what's happening in like the story of the ability. So we'll go through it. Definitely get rid of that one. Again, some of these are just like things that I'm like, let me just add like a little bit more sauce here, and you hear it for like one fraction of a second somewhere as something else goes and ducks in volume. But anyways, so the main risers here are this. And so this is just like some sort of basic trap riser. I mean, you could probably find some Lil Jon song with that or something. That's kind of what I was going for, you know, that 2000s era type of hip hop, like trappish riser. This was actually, that is a hit. That is the gun from my Cyberpunk redesign, the first one that I uploaded. Just some tonal upwards magic stuff. And then what I did for a couple things here was, I don't have it in this session. It was done with a different session, but I basically bounced out the entire audio of what I had up until that point. And then I ran it through Unfiltered Audio's Silo plugin. I'm just going to pull it up. Yeah, I already had it. So I was playing with it. A different thing. I only have 1 day left on the trial. I've been using this plugin like insanely over the past 2 weeks. I think I'm going to buy it. It's really, really cool. And it's basically just a granular synthesis, or a granular sampler-ish plugin. It granulates stuff. You get a bunch of really cool pitch and timing things, and it has like all of the these locations here. It's really, really cool. If you ever, I reach for it when I just need something else for a sound, and I want something maybe a bit gritty and a bit like pitchy. And just a bit unexpected. Like maybe I've been working for a while and I just kind of want to hear something new. It's really cool to kind of like literally just bounce out everything I've already done and resample it through a plugin like this. Definitely go and check this out. I'm not going to dive into it right now because it's extremely deep, but yeah, 10 out of 10 recommend. And anyways, what I did was, oops. Oh, I just hit my screen set button there. Keep this big for now. Why not? What I did was, resample all of that and ended up with, it's this stem here. Shut for a sec. Like I was like gating it into the reverb in the certain points and like just sort of seeing what I would get from it and then taking pieces of that. And so with this, I didn't really have much reverb on this ability because I wanted it to be nice and clear and upfront, you know, not drenched in reverb. But this sort of acts like that, and it's a very like weird sort of reverb to have. So you can hear it subtly. It's not a big thing, but what I did do was I took parts of that and made this riser. So you can hear other stems in that, you know, pitched down and granulated, and that became the kind of second main riser. Because I had this and I was pretty happy with it, but it just needed some more body, some more girth, you know. And yeah, that was that. So this was serving a lot, like I was saying before, pitch goes up, envelope goes down, gets ready for the next 3 hits, builds that dissonance and that tension. Then you get your whole I can do this here, right? Yeah, okay. You get all that business, and then you get your final hit here, which more or less the same principle as the 2 hits at the start, but with the record, you know, like when it stops, right? Like when when you press stop and it spins down quickly. So I'll go through each layer. Cool. And so same thing I was talking about, right? Pitch needs to go down this time, and the envelope needs to go down because there's not a lot like left over at the end here, like after. And I did kind of experiment with having stuff at the end here, but it kind of just felt awkward. I don't know. I hate having stuff in the video that, like, that's what I would do, but I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. I might keep it. I might change my mind when I actually like put together the kind of the edited reel of all of these, but For the most part, this is like where the sound actually ends. And so you can see I got the riser into that, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, this would be kind of like the body of all of the thematic stuff. And that was more or less how I went about doing that, as I described before. But just all that context, all that thematicness has to be defined somewhere, but I wanted it to still be very clearly a blade attack. And this was the kind of way that I decided to go about it, was, you know, it's got a lot of low end in it. It's got a lot of whatever. Maybe you could have made the blade like a record scratch or something. Or maybe I just didn't do it right, but I tried doing stuff like that and it just kind of felt wrong. And anytime I would close my eyes, I'm like, that does not sound like what I am actually doing or would be seeing on the screen. So that's why I made the decision to do it kind of this way and focus more of my thematic design in the non-blade area. And yet allows you to kind of keep the actual like ability itself feel a bit lighter too. Anyways, I'm really happy with that decision because it turned out, I think, pretty sick. Because what does this sound like, right? Like I said before, what is a trap knife, true damage, hip hop urban knife attack sound like? I think it sounds like this personally. Would love to see other people's takes on it. You know, I think the only real place that I've seen that is with Riot and True Damage. You know, and I thought that was just such a cool thing, which is partially again why I chose this VFX when I saw it. I was like, holy, I can do that. Anyways, yeah, pitch goes down, envelope goes down. A lot of those like record sounds. Where is it here? Yeah. I'm so surprised this worked. And again, you could take out some of these layers and it wouldn't make night and day difference, but there's just a few of them like the record. I'm pretty stoked with that. And then these are all from the resampled thing that I was describing before with unfiltered audio silo. Just like a more interesting tail. I don't know. It's like when I'm doing these types of sound designs, like, yeah, I could just do a reverb or I could just kind of fade it out or add like take the room tail something of something else. But like you have the opportunity, right? Like you can make a cool tail to something, like just something slightly more interesting. And I feel like constantly making those conscious decisions to make it slightly more interesting is how you end up with something impressive. To me, like sometimes when I'll listen to a sound design reel and it's very like literal, I guess, or I don't know, there's just like car gets smashed and it's just the sound of a car being smashed, but it's like, okay, but like you could do a little bit more. And I think a better example, is like something like this, right? Where like this doesn't exist. Like I get to choose how this exists. And I wanted it to be what I said, trap, urban, true damage, still sound like a knife attack. And so I get to be creative with how I'm doing this. And this was an opportunity, like small things like this, to just create a little bit of tail in the low end and stuff, a little bit of warble, you know, a release from the kind of like tightness of a lot of this stuff. That was another, I guess, word that kind of stuck with, especially in the low end, right? Like it's the low end of this. Like I designed this like I'd be like producing, you know, like a trap or like audio engineering and mixing like a trap song, you know, like the low end is nice and tight and round and clean, not like really distorted, not noisy in the low end. Like anything that I added together in the low end kind of like blended together into a nice kind of round sort of soupy thing. And then in the top end, you can get a little bit more messy, but it's a lot of pitched stuff. There's not a lot of atonal stuff. And a lot of it, like the sounds are starting, stopping very intentionally, very quickly. It's very tight and it's very controlled because that's what I see when I see this ability, but then I think that that also fits in with almost like a rap sort of cadence. And yeah, this was difficult to do because it took a lot of like actual thought. And as I was doing things, I'm like, oh, this does feel like, this knife attack does feel like rap. Like how do you conceptualize that, right? Like that was kind of the struggle with this. And it was a lot of layering. It was a lot of, as you see here, you know, like 100 tracks for this. And that's not including my sound design sessions, like all these risers and these falls and stuff. Like most of these I designed in a different session. So, you know, there's even probably a couple hundred other tracks there and samples that I ran through and grabbed pieces from to make whatever. Yeah, I'll try not to yap on for too much longer about this, but I'm pretty stoked about this. There was a couple moments where I was a bit frustrated and thinking that I've maybe bitten off something a bit more advanced for myself than I was ready for, but I'm personally quite happy with the results. I hope if you're watching this far, you're at least interested in my breakdown of things and how I'm thinking about it, because this was difficult to think of a rap urban true damage knife attack. So yeah, probably a couple other things I wanted to say, but you know, I kind of forget them as I'm recording. Yeah, I hope this was cool. I'll add on anything if I forget it, but otherwise, have a great day. I hope this was informative and interesting or something. Okay, peace.